How to build with Ninjabike backpack. Now, I have no love for this bag. However, one of my main pet peeves about this bag is people actually just genuinely don't know how to build with it. Now, I get what people are trying to do, okay? I'm not saying people are stupid or anything. I understand that it opens up a lot of options. The problem is those options are generally mitigated completely by talents. And then there's the attitude that the more you can put into a build, the better it will do, which is very, very simply not true. I've seen it time and time again of people being like, I want all of the red cores, all of the blue cores, skill tier 6, and I want to use like 9 different skills while running 12 different weapons. Obviously, I'm exaggerating, but the point still stands. People are just trying to do too much, and they're not quite getting it. And one of the largest responses I've always got to my distaste for this bag has been from the PvP community. Granted, this bag is going to have a little bit more of an effect in PvP, but only by about 4%, like, if that. And that's mostly actually largely due to how Picaro's holster works in PvP. And I say works within PvP, I just mean like at lower weapon core, because of where you're able to build for more blue cores. Having just that extra 15% weapon damage that Picaro's would give you has a lot more value to it rather than being on a full red build, which is why, generally speaking, in terms of you're going for like a DPS style build within PvP, Picaro's is very handy. But on the flip side, if you're doing the same thing but in PvE, Picaro's actually isn't as good as a lot of people think, but that's going to be a different topic altogether. So the point of this video is to try and demonstrate to people how to actually build with Ninjabike. And the truth of this is what we used to call the KISS method. Keep it simple, stupid. KISS, K-I-S-S. Now there's 2 ways to look at this. What additional thing do you want to add to your build? And when I say additional thing, keep it to 1. So if you're going for a DPS build, what 1 thing would you like to add to your build? Or what have you got on your build or really would like to use on your build that Ninjabike could help bolster? For the footage that you're seeing right now, I really wanted to run Chameleon. However, at range, Chameleon is horrible, and I don't want to waste 2 pieces of Overlord to get that 30% accuracy buff. I also really want to run Strikers. So now I have a choice to make. I could run an Overlord armaments piece for the 10% rifle damage and then run Ninjabike to get 10% rifle damage, crit chance, crit damage as the rolls, and then obviously with Ninjabike I'd get the 2-piece, which is 30% accuracy. Or I could run something like Fox's Prayer and get a little bit more detox out of it. So out of the 2 options, I'm going to be picking Fox's Prayer. Get a bit of detox. The rifle wasn't giving me anything. However, I am getting, essentially from running 1 piece, I'm getting 30% accuracy, which the Chameleon really needs, and I'm getting another 8% damage to targets out of cover, which on a striker build and how striker works isn't particularly needed, but it can help out, essentially. Running 3-piece strikers. Do I want to make the conscious choice to running the chest with it? Which, for me personally, no. For most of the engagements that I'm going to be using this sort of build for, running around like a lunatic, probably won't really actually have any issue getting as well in maintaining stacks up to 100, but getting 200 stacks could potentially be an issue, as engagements don't really last that long outside of raids, incursions, or legendary, which I personally wouldn't run this style of build for. So that now leaves me with what option do I want for chest. Now with the amount of rolls that I now have available to me, because I've opted into using Ninjabike backpacks, I'm really going to start needing some extra crit. Now, for a lot of you, you might be going, oh, extra crit, easy, Cheska, that's great, but that's going to give me as well 10% Hasbro, which is, in the grand scheme of things, 10% Hasbro is not that useful. Hasbro is only really useful once you start getting to around the 80%, ideally 90, and then above that, obviously, hitting the caps, which for a lot of them are like 93 to 95%. So getting an extra 10% Hasbro to be at like 20, 30% Hasbro isn't actually going to be a help in any way, shape or form. So what else can we put here that is going to benefit us? Well, unsurprisingly, Cheska is not the only source of crit we're actually able to get from brand sets. A very prominent one is going to actually be 2-piece Providence, 15% headshot and then 10% crit chance. So lo and behold, this is what I came up with. Now this kind of follows the first rule I said, what do I have or want to use that could use a little bit of extra a helping hand, which I really wanted to use Chameleon. I really like Chameleon in terms of like overall look and design. I think it's the best looking weapon in the game. In terms of overall performance, it's not that bad, but its accuracy, especially for an AR, its accuracy is absolutely horrible. So I wanted to bolster that, and in bolstering that, I harm my crit rolls. So in order to make up for that, Providence. I basically just have a normal DPS build that makes Chameleon a little bit more comfortable to use, especially at range. And although it isn't going to be as high in terms of overall DPS, and it's certainly not as comfortable as some other top tier DPS builds, simply because you really do feel it when Chameleon drops off, the overall performance of it is more than enough to get through, like, well, you can basically get through heroic content with literally anything nowadays, but like, there is genuinely a noticeable difference between when you have or haven't got the Chameleon buff, which is also where like this entire build is sort of hinging on. Essentially, this build is literally just there to try and maximize adaptive instincts. That's literally it, and the way in which we're able to utilize adaptive instincts through use of accuracy and obviously bolstering crit, so that we don't have these massive fall-offs here, there, everywhere when we do have the Chameleon buff and then when we don't. So natively we are rocking like 53% crit chance. We could drop it lower and rely more on the Chameleon buff, but that's just going to make it even more annoying and irritating to use. As you can see in overall damage, like headshots we're getting over 1 mil, and like when we got the full buff and stack active we're hitting like 1.3. It's perfectly fine. It works. Now, some of you are going, oh, well, this doesn't actually look too bad. Like, why do you hate Ninjabike Backpack? Because I've just had to spend nearly 7 minutes explaining this entire process when I could have just put on 4-piece strikers, Cheska, Coyote's Mask, and a Foamath and done the exact same damn thing. So what if we want a little bit more upfront tankiness with a shield? Put Picaro's holster on with Ninjabike Backpack. This is a skill tier 4 shield with 2 blue cores. What if we want a little bit more armor on kill? Bellstone holster, 1% armor regen and then 10% armor on kill. What if you want a little bit of upfront tankiness with a little bit of self-sustained? Forge is actually pretty good here with its plus 50% shield health. We're still getting a skill tier 3 shield, could go forward if we run technician, and then with incoming repairs as well as explosive resistance, this potentially could be a pretty decent-ish way to actually play around with things. But you might notice that from all of the builds that I've just shown, the overall core dynamic of them hasn't actually changed. They are very much a DPS build first with added ancillaries, essentially. The one I'm running in the background footage, I wanted to make Chameleon more accurate. Brilliant. With the next one, I wanted a little bit more upfront tankiness by use of shield, or we can easily get a skill tier 4 shield by use of Picaro's holster with 2 blue cores. If we run Gunner, that's still another 10% armor on kill. If we run a Bellstone piece, we can get 1% armor regen, 2 blue cores, and 20% armor on kill. If we run the Forge, we get a little bit more health with the use of the Forge's named perk, 50% shield health, which essentially puts us 1 skill tier up, essentially. But we also get some incoming repairs as well as some explosive resistance, because you never know, things occasionally go boom. What all 3 of them have in common is they are absolutely, very visibly, a DPS build first, which is something that a lot of people kind of lose track of. They want X, Y, Z all in equal amounts. This is a very, very quick and easy way to actually make a very bad build. Pick what your overall stat of what the build you want to be and then work on it from there. Don't try and add too much into it. Generally isn't worth it, and please do always remember that regardless of what you think you can realistically do with Ninjabike Backpack, there's a plethora of other ways to do it without it, and they're generally more powerful. Generally. Now for my next point, I want to go somewhere where I don't normally go, and that is down the PvP route. Now for those of you that don't know, I have literally 0 interest in PvP. It's not my thing. I really couldn't care. However, the one thing that everyone seems to think, that the overall dynamic of builds between PvE and PvP are different. This is not true. The only thing that is different between PvP and PvE are one multiplier. These are the multipliers. They're on screen now, as you can see, like AI and LMG 0.3995. This is literally the only difference between PvE and PvP, obviously other than fighting AI and people. But in terms of how a build works, this is the difference. We have these, we've known them for ages. If a build works in PvP, it will probably work in PvE. The overall build dynamic doesn't actually change, despite the fact that the need for a build will change. Like in PvE, outside of things like incursion or raids, there's not really any need, if at all, for Hasbro builds. In PvP, there is, but no one's ever seemed to caught on to the fact that the ones that are actually used in both PvE and PvP are basically identical in terms of overall need/use. Although, that being said, you actually also do find that the ones used in PvE are typically stronger. And before people argue about this, because I know someone's going to, how often can you throw like fire at someone in PvP? There's either going to be a skill cooldown, or you've got 6 grenades. Now go to the control room in the Iron Horse raid, where depending on the style and the team makeup, you could probably potentially spend 20 minutes in this room burning to death slowly. Most PvP builds won't last in that room. PvE builds do. Now, there are 2 other differences, but these are either stated or people like me figure it out and then tell people like you. The first one being that some items do just change their overall working depending on the environment they're in, such as Scorpio being a very good example. In PvE, the first shot is poison. In PvP, I believe the first shot is bleed. Like, the item literally tells you that it has a change depending on whether you're in PvP or PvE. The next one is going to be what we call returns to scale. It's going to be a very basic explanation, but as you can see here, I've got 1 to 10 written down, and then the value in which they increase in a percentage from the original value. So from 1 to 2 is a 100% increase. From 2 to 3, this is just a 50% increase. From 3 to 4, 33. You get the picture. What this actually means is when it comes to like red cores and how much damage you're able to put out, the lower the value, the more each value you give it is worth in a way. This isn't to be confused with diminishing returns. That's something different. This is quite simply just how numbers work. The value of each number is staying the same. It's just not as prominent the larger the scale gets, hence why it's returns to scale. Now, for the PvP players among you, I'm going to put 2 builds up on screen and I want you to guess which one is stronger. So the first build, we've got 2 Legmo, Picaros, Contractors, Foxes, Ninjabike Backpack. The second one, 2 Legmo, Picaros, Contractors, and Heartbreaker. They're basically the exact same, just one's running Contractors, Foxes, one's running Contractors, and then Heartbreaker. What one's stronger, do we think? Now, the reason I ask is I've done a little bit of research on this, and when it comes to Iron Lung Legmo builds, these 2 are basically in an argument over which one of them is the meta. Well, what if I told you they are the exact damn same? Like, there's literally no difference between them. Now, before people go, but like Heartbreaker will give you the same thing, but like with ARs as well. So would the other one. They literally work out to equal no matter what weapon you put on them. As long as the weapon is the same and set up the same, they are completely and utterly equal. So going back to rule 1, what have you got and how can you bolster it? Well, it surprises certainly not me that no one thought to put Providence on, simply just because this would absolutely, on this style of build, would absolutely work out the best. So putting Providence on gives us the exact same build capabilities as what the current Legmo meta is, but we get 4 to 5% more DPS. Now in PvP, that 4 to 5% is actually pretty damn huge. Hilariously so. It will play the same way, it will feel the same way, does the exact same thing, does the exact same thing that the build is set up to do. It just does more. And I really do find it ironic how the same people that criticize me are the same people that can't fucking build. So there you have it. How to build Ninjabike backpack, or build with Ninjabike backpack. Now I suppose me saying that it is a piece of shit item or it's just generally terrible isn't entirely accurate. There are some merits to it. However, the more accurate term would be that in the current economy within the game, there's not really much place for it, which is a shame. It really is a shame. I'm aware some people like to call me like an elitist or a purist. Really, I'm not. I just want everything to at least have a purpose in the game, and I would actually love it if Ninjabike had an actual purpose within the game. The problem is with how diluted the overall game economy is, at this point, not having a purpose is akin to being pretty damn bad. This potentially could change if we start to get things like classified sets back into the Division 2. We don't know. However, the fact remains, no matter how much people are going to want to argue and throw their things around, regardless of PvE or PvP, Ninjabike backpack is not as powerful or as worthwhile as a lot of people think. The main area where Ninjabike backpack actually comes into play is if it's used in tandem with Picaro's holster. That's mostly it. And that's simply just because 2 items can give you 2 blue cores, 2 red cores, and 2 yellows. That's it. Everywhere else, it's kind of a... But yeah, hopefully this will give you some ideas or maybe help fix some of your Ninjabike builds that you've already got running if you weren't too comfortable with them. However, in the meantime, have fun, good luck, don't die. It's bad for the health.